Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today we're going to be making some quilling paper snowdrop flowers. Basic supplies for these: we need white quilling paper strips and a green of your choice. I have a nice bright green. Both these papers are from Quilled Creations and they're 1/8 inch wide. You will need a needle tool, tweezers, a small paintbrush, some small scissors, and also a slotted tool. I didn't show that here, but you will need a slotted quilling tool. We're going to be making the majority of this flower on our quilling comb. So I'm using the Super Looper, but you can use whatever quilling comb you like. I'm also going to be using some pins on my work board. And for glue, I do have Aleene's clear tacky glue and just some regular old Elmer's glue wall in my needle nose container. So to start with, I thought I would do something different this time and just show a quick picture of a snowdrop flower so we all get familiar with the shapes we're going to be making. There's a long straight stem that opens to a wider part at the top. There are 3 blossoms in white that are coming out of sort of a cup from the stem, and then there's also some nice broad leaves at the bottom. So this actually translates really easily into quilling because there's just some simple shapes that we're going to be creating. To start, we are going to be making the stem for the snowdrop, that nice straight skinny stem. To do that, we're taking a full strip, it's about 18 inches of that green quilling paper, and folding it in half to make a double thick strip. Anyone who has been a follower of mine have seen me do this many times. I just apply a thin but steady line of glue down 1/2, starting at the fold and going all the way to the end, making sure that I cover any spots that look like they don't have a drop of glue on it. Any place where you don't have glue is going to make a little air bubble, so you don't really want that. Once I have the line of glue, get it all organized again from the fold, and just zip it down through my fingers just to push out any air and make sure that that glue gets spread out from end to end. What's really important for this flower is that you want this strip to dry really straight and flat. So I recommend, instead of just sitting it down on a table like I would normally do, put something flat on top of it. This is a little bit small, but a nice heavy book or something, just to keep it flat and in one straight line as it dries. As that dries, we're going to be moving on to the blossom part of the snowdrop, and that is going to be made in the white paper I have here, also from Quilled Creations. Don't forget, I'll have links to all the supplies I use in the description box for this video. We don't need the entire 18 inches for these petals, so we're going to be ripping off about 5 inches or so. I have 4 strips here, even though we're only going to be making 3 petals, one of which is going to be made out of 2 of these strips. We'll get to that in a second. So for this part, we're going to be using our needle tool. You can use a slotted tool if that makes you feel more comfortable. In fact, I'm actually going to be doing something different today for this part as well. I'm going to be manually rolling it up with my hands. I know some people prefer to do this, so I thought I would show that today. So I just started it on my needle tool. That's not necessary. If you like rolling your paper by hand, you can just jump right in and get it rolled, but it does make it a little bit easier to start with. So I'm rolling it up here end to end, as you can see. We're just going to get to the end. There we go. Now I'm going to let this open in my fingers, not all the way, but nice and steady. And then squeezing it right down the center, bend one section over your thumb. Try not to make a point on that end, making a point on the other end, and then with your fingernail, kind of giving it a little indent on the top. We're looking for a really oblong teardrop that's sort of bowed in the middle. Once I have that shape, I'm going to apply some glue to the tail of my quilling paper. It's very cold in my house when I was filming this. My glue just kept seizing on me. Even though I had it upside down off camera, it just wanted to keep seizing. It was kind of annoying. So finally got the glue going, get that sealed up, get that nice bend and that crooked point on the other side. This is going to be one of the two petals that were on either side of that big center petal. And the reason it's going to be smaller is because we're sort of looking at the side. It's like a profile view of that petal. We're going to be making two of those exactly the same way, one for either side of the center petal. Next, we're going to be moving on to what is going to be the center petal. It's going to start off exactly the same way. I'm going to roll it from end to end in my hand, just like I did the last one. The shape is also going to be sort of similar. And we're going to be making two of these again, exactly the same way. But to make the broader petal that we're looking straight on, we're going to be gluing these two together to make a bit of a bigger petal. I'll show all that in a moment. But we've almost got this rolled all the way to the end. There we are. So same deal as last time. Open it up a bit, just like so. And like I said, a similar shape, squeezing from the center, bending it a little bit, but not so much making that kind of crooked bit at the top. When we put all the petals together in a little bit, you'll see why I kind of like that little crooked bit at the top. But for the center petals on the blossom, we don't need that part. So it's, again, just a really long, skinny teardrop is what we're looking for this part. Trying not to make a point on one end, but a nice big point on the other. And like I said, we need two of those. So two of the first type, two of the second type. This is what we should be looking at this point. We are going to get the two for the center nice and snuggled up next to each other. Apply a little bit of glue down the center. And this can be done a number of ways. You can do this by hand and just hold it until it stays together. You can start it by hand and then pin it together until it stays. You can just go in with your pins and get it nice and tight that way. That's what I'm doing here, just for the ease of making this video go a little bit quicker for you. I'm just going to go ahead with my pins, get the top nice and snuggled together, get the bottom nice and snuggled together. I like to do a combination of pins on the outside, pins on the inside, just to make sure that everybody's happy. And once I get them together, I usually move the pins inside like I have here, just so I know nothing is going to move on me. Sometimes when you have the pins only on the outside, the force of the paper might become a little bit uneven. But that is what I am looking for at this point. That's going to be that center petal in our flower. So we're going to set that aside for a bit to dry and move on to our next part. So after a few minutes, that piece in the center will be dry, and we can go ahead to add our other two petals to that center petal. So we are going to simply glue them to the sides. If you think back to the picture of our snowdrop, on either side of that center petal, like I've been saying, there are two petals in profile. And instead of hugging that petal closely, they're sort of pushed off to the side, almost flipping out from the top. So that's what that little bend is going to help with. It's going to help with that kind of pushing off from the top, connected to the top and then pushed off to the side. And what I did find to make it even more realistic when I was doing some research into snowdrops, I found that a lot of times one of the side petals would be flipping off a lot and the other one would be a little bit more connected to the flower. Like they're just not separating as they're blooming at the same time. So what I like to do is glue one about 2/3 of the way down and connect it to the center flower, and then have the other one just connected at the very tippy top. So that's what I'm working on here. This is the one that's going to be a little bit closer. Just like that. Get the pins in there to get that to dry the way I want it to. So you can see the one on the left flipping out a lot, and the one on the right staying a little bit closer. We're going to let that dry and move on to the next section of our flower, which is going to be what connects the stem to the blossom, or at least what's going to hold the blossom. And we're going to be making that on our quilling comb. I like to start off with a little bit of an anchor by rolling a couple rounds on my needle tool, taking it off and sliding that right on one of the teeth of my comb. I've been doing that for a long time. It just makes it a little bit easier to hold the paper. It doesn't slide off as much. And the technique we're using on the comb today is just weaving in and out from the front to the back of the comb, adding one tooth on the top and bottom over and over again until we get about 5 or 6 from the top and the bottom. So 5 or 6 from where we started. It's going to take majority of this 18-inch strip, and I'm just going back and forth and back and forth. Notice I didn't add any glue until I'm almost done. And majority of the time I'm using a quilling comb, I don't use any glue at all until I'm done. But I found for this particular shape, there goes my glue season in his cold house again. This particular shape needed a little bit of glue to reinforce the shape we're looking for. And I'll show you that shape after we take this off the tool here in a second. So a little bit of glue, make it nice and straight and flat, and then a little bit of glue on the back here, using the side of my needle nose container to kind of spread that out a bit. Adding that last tooth to that side. And then I'm going to give it another round of paper, not adding any teeth at this time, just to make it a little bit more substantial and strong. And bring it back to that front again. And a little bit more glue again. So this is slightly different than how I would normally make this. This is really just for this one part of the flower. It's a very specific shape and it just needs to be a little strong to hold up the blossom. So I made a point on one side when I took it off my tool, and now I'm bending it over my thumbs, and I'm not pinching the other end. I'm doing this quickly as soon as I took it off the tool because I want that glue to be still sort of wet. I really want it to hold this shape as it dries. And what you're going to be ending up with is sort of a really long curved teardrop, almost like a hockey stick. That's what I kept thinking. These look like hockey sticks when I was done with them. Once it's on the stem, you'll see what I mean. If you need a little bit more of a curve, you can bend it around the handle of a tool. But that is what we're looking for. It's not super curved in the middle. It's really just on the pointed end. That extra glue is going to reinforce that shape, as is those extra couple of rounds of quilling paper that we used on the end couple of laps. So you only need one of those per stem. But we're going to do a similar kind of idea to make those really broad leaves you saw at the bottom of the stem where the plant would be coming from the ground. Really similar idea, except this time we don't need as much glue, and you can make these varying different shapes, so you don't have to make them all the same size. Some of the leaves are going to be longer and wider than some of the other leaves. So just like we did the last shape, we started off with the anchor, and we're going back and forth a few times. And just kind of eyeball whatever size you want. I wouldn't go too much bigger than 6 on either side. But this is where we're going to stop here, and I'm going to take off the excess. And this is more of a traditional way that I would use a quilling comb. I didn't add glue to those last couple of passes. I'm just adding it to the end of my tail and then getting that secured down before I take it off my comb, pull it off, and now I'm going to just pinch one end and just kind of push on the other end just to make sure that it's not getting flat on that side. And that's all you need for the leaves, for lack of a better term, of the plant. We're now on to the last couple of small details for the snowdrop. We're going to be making a cone with our slotted tool. You need about 5 or 6 inches of that same green that you've been using for the rest of the plant. Start off by rolling it pretty straight on your slotted tool for a few rounds, and then you're going to slightly hold the rest of the paper at an angle away from the tool. Hold it nice and tightly and keep rolling. And what you're going to see is the paper starts to make a cone shape. I have a whole video on making cones. I could link in the description box if you need more detail. Once it gets to be about a 1/4 inch or so wide at the largest end, I'll rip off my extra carefully. I don't want to lose my cone shape. Apply a small bit of glue to the end and spin that a couple of times just to set the glue. This is the piece that's going to hold our blossom in place. So we want to make sure that the end of that cone is wide enough to be able to fit around the very tippy top point of our flower blossom. Go ahead and pop that off after a few seconds when it is set. And that is the shape we're looking for. I like to give it a small squeeze just to make it more of an oval shape instead of a circle. If you have a little bit of a longer end that's poking out from the bottom, just make sure that goes in the back of your flower. You won't see it. Don't worry about cutting it off or anything. You're not going to see it later. So let's put together what we have so far. We have our flower petals. We have the piece that's going to connect the stem to the flower. We have our cone and we have our stem. Everything is dry and ready to go. We also have a bunch of leaves that we made off camera. We have our leaves. Now it's time to put our flower together. This stem is quite long for what we're going to be needing. We really just need about 5 or 6 inches. So I'm going to cut off some of that. I do, however, need a little bit of the piece that I cut off. I need about a 1/2 inch or so. Just for that one final little detail, that's going to connect the cone to that hockey stick looking piece that's going to be coming from our stem. This will all make sense very, very shortly. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a curve around my needle tool. Now, I want to mention one thing. As we're putting this together, you can put, if you're planning on putting this on a card or some mat board like I'm going to show later, you can put all of these pieces on separately. You don't need to put them together like I'm going to be doing now. You have 2 different options. Saying that, going back to the video now, I applied a little bit of glue inside the cone and just put that on the top of my flower blossom. Get that to dry. I'm also going to now put together my stem. For that, I'm going to be using some tacky glue because I want this to set up kind of quickly. We're going to be fighting against gravity for a few seconds here as we get it all together, because I am actually going to be putting the stem on its side, just like this. I'm not going to be using it flat. I want it to be standing up on its side so that the width of it is the same as all the rest of my quilling shapes. So I'm going to use a bunch of pins here on either side of the stem to keep it in place. Mine is kind of popping up here because my parchment paper has sort of a bubble in it at the end. It just wasn't a super flat piece of parchment. So that's why my stem is kind of giving me a little bit of difficulty here, but this will work for now. I'm going to hold the end of that curved piece that we made to go on the end of the stem and just dip it in my tacky glue. And I've been using this clear tacky glue for a little while now, and I gotta say I really like it quite a bit better than the standard. It just seems to be easier to work with. It's nice not to have the big glue blobs all over the place. Highly recommend the clear tacky glue. So you can see now where that hockey stick reference comes from. That's all I can see once I thought of it. I don't know if that's going to make sense worldwide, but that's what I see. The next thing we're going to do is apply that tiny bit we cut off the stem to the end of what is now the rest of our flower stem. So again, adding a little bit of the tacky glue by dipping. If you want to use a toothpick or apply it in some other way, you're welcome to. That's just what I wanted to use for today. I like to dip. And then we're going to be putting our flower with that little cone to connect it all right on the end of that bit. And that is essentially our snowdrop. We did have some leaves we're going to add in a little bit, but that is the flower that we're looking for. So like I said, when I was showing the picture, it really does translate very easily into quilling. After a few minutes, that's going to be dry. If you need to, use a needle tool to get it off your parchment paper. I have already gotten mine off, so that's why it came off so easy. Nice and straight with our flower coming from the other end. And what are our options? We can put these on cards. We can put them on something nice and sturdy for some home decor. I have a big 5x7 piece of white mat board. I could link to that also in the description box. I wanted to show really quickly, I'm not actually going to be doing it, I'm kind of pantomiming this part for the sake of a quick video, how you can apply it. Let's say you put all of your pieces on your stem, make a nice line of tacky glue, dip, 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 wipe, wipe, wipe to make sure you get off any excess, and just put it on your mat board or your card. You're going to need a lot less glue than you think, so that's why the tapping is a good idea. Same thing with the leaves here. Obviously, I'm not actually doing this. I didn't want to take the time to show you over and over again as it dries and do the whole thing. I have one that I've already done. I'll show at the end here. Just do these however you like. There's some extra leaves. Tap, tap, tap. And there we go. I also wanted to demonstrate quickly if you wanted to glue these on something but do it in pieces. Let's say putting it all together makes you nervous. You'd rather put the stem and then the topper of the stem and then the pieces on. You can do that too. Do the same method. Get all your pieces together, make sure they're all dry, and then you have your stem, tap, 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 and put it on your final piece. Just remember that once you do this, it's going to be where it is. The tacky glue is going to set pretty quickly. You might need to hold the stem up for a couple of seconds with your tweezers or however you are applying it. There we go. This is one I've already done. That's nice and dry. I did the same method where I dipped it on the pile of the tacky glue and then tapped off any extra. I did add a little small leaf to the side. There's the one I was just demonstrating as well, now that it's been glued. And there you have your quilling paper snowdrops. I hope all of that was fairly clear. You know, you can ask any questions by putting them in the comment section of the videos, and I always try to answer them as quickly and as fully as I can. Like I said, I'll leave links to everything else you need, all the supplies, all the tools, any other videos I think will be helpful. I will leave those links in the description box for this video. You'll also see there a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can check out some quilling extras or even purchase an extra video that I haven't shown on this channel if you wish. It's a great way to support the channel so I can keep making these videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be around for my next video, and I'll see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.